Okay, let's get started. First, let me go over my gears and talk about the most important things in this build. So first, let's go to the helm, and the most important stats on the helm is the Skilled Warrior Mastery, because this is our biggest multiplier for our damage. And also, we want to have max health, and we try to stack health on every piece of our gear, if possible. And the third stat can be intelligence or cooldown reduction depending on what you want. For a thorns build, intelligence increase your amps your thorn damages, so intelligence is pretty good. And for the tempering, usually you want one defensive tempering plus the other utility, which is a thorn. In a thorn tempering, you can choose either minion inherit thorns, or skilled warrior inherit thorns, or thorns when you are fortified. So three of these are, viable. So for this particular build, it's not easy to break your gear. So that's one advantage of that. So for example, here I'm getting a warrior thorn and blood mist duration. And for the chest, of course, we want to raise a plate and try to get higher rolls as high as possible, and also you want to have the effect as high as possible, because this effect does affect your minions. I tested out. You will transfer to a minion, so your minions' thorns can crit. So bear that in mind. And for the gloves, so there are many variations of this build, but this build right now I'm showing is the one that I used to push tier 112. So here I'm using the Ultimate Shadow here as the aspect. And for the stats, you want attack speed and preferably greater affix, because you will notice that attack speed is super important in this build. And also you want max life and intelligence. Or if you want some more mage damage, you may roll the mage damage, but that won't do much in this build because most of the damage of this build comes from thorns damage. But I mean, it's a little bit good additive if you have the mage mastery, so that's also fine. And for the offensive part, we want to roll damage to close, because our minions inherit 100% of our stats, and also because the thorns damage they deal basically happens within close range, because your warriors will just run to the enemy, also your columns, right? So they will deal close damage, and this is triggered by the damage source. So basically, no matter where you stand, if they are close to the enemy, they should benefit from this close enemy damage. And of course, when you are standing closer to them, they benefit more because of the helmet commander. And let's move to the pants. And for the pants, you want, of course, max life and intelligence. And one more thing here, I have the thorns. That's a good, addition to this build. And also you want, for example, you can roll armor if you cannot reach the armor cap. Or maybe you can roll Mage Mastery if you want a little bit more damage from the mages. But I think it's not that useful, because as I said, the main source of our damage is our Warrior and Golem Thorns. And for the defensive part, you can choose whatever you want. If you want lower Blood Mist cooldown, that's fine. And here I'm choosing to have more life. And also for the utility temporary, we want a Thorn Army, so one of those three that I mentioned. And for the boots, of course, the main thing here is the Skilled Warrior Mastery. So that's a must on your boots, because this is our biggest multiplier. And here I'm rolling an armor roll, because I need to reach my armor cap, which is like 9-2 something, 9-2-30. And here I'm at just a little bit over. And the other is movement speed, right? you want to have movement speed on your boots, because it's very important to have movement speed to dodge those boss mechanisms, so you have an easier time to dodge the Lilith Wave and other stuff. And again, we roll the Skeletal Warrior Inheritance of Thorns. And I forgot to talk about those aspects, and you should put the plus Skeletal Warrior and Mage on either your, yeah, I probably better here, because I put the Bone Storm, Shooting Storm on my pants, and that's big source of our defensive parts, the barrier. And let's move to the weapon. I think ideally you want to use a dagger, because the dagger, the intrinsic stat of dagger is close damage. But because I didn't have a nicely rolled dagger, I have to use this sword, because I got 2 greater affixes on my sword. And for the sword, you want intelligence, life, and another additive damage. You can either roll damage or vulnerable damage, because we have Bone Prison to make the enemies vulnerable. So vulnerable damage is, viable here. And for the tempering, you want to roll minion attack speed, because attack speed is key to our build. We want to reach 100% attack speed. Well, at least, I would say at least 80% attack speed, because we need to rely on Cult Leader, which is one of the biggest multipliers. If we reach 100% attack speed, we can have that 2.5x damage, right? And here I'm using the reanimation, so basically it's like a 40% X on all our minions. Our minions won't die, they're super tanky. If you build like me, they won't die. I never saw one minion die, even when I push to 110 or stuff. Yeah. And let's move to the Amulet. So this I used to put hardened bones on my Amulet, but for pushing, I pushed to tier 109 with hardened bones on my Amulet, but I think that's it for my current gear. That was the limit. So I switched to lighted on my Amulet, and then I pushed to 112. So for the Amulet, I think the ideal one would be attack speed, Death's Embrace, and Hellbent Commander. You can see here I have those 2 passives, which is great, but I wish I had the attack speed, because right now if you look at my sheet, I'm at 84.7. So if I had a good roll of attack speed here, I could reach 100%, so I'll have another 30% X damage from Cult Leader. And for the ring, here I'm using the Needle Flare, which I think is kind of questionable. I would like to try changing this to something else, like Intercom, for example, because we are super tanky. Most of the time we just standing face to face to the monsters, and Intercom is actually pretty good. So I think after I switched on this Needle Flare, I didn't feel like it did too much it didn't feel like I gained 40% basically. So this is a little bit questionable. I need to do more experiment. So maybe I'll change that to Intercom to push higher, maybe. That's big, maybe. And for the stats, we want attack speed and max life and intelligence. And of course, here we want the ultimate cooldown tempering and damage to close, same as our Amulet. Yeah, if for example you feel that you have enough cooldown of your ultimate, you can also roll Golem active cooldown, which is very useful because the Golem taunt, although Golem is not our main source of damage, but when the Golem taunts, you want to taunt close to your Skeletal Warriors, and all those enemies, they will use their cleave or sweep attacks. Basically they will hit multiple targets, so taunt from the Golem is actually very useful in this case. And here I'm using the Osseous Scale as our aspect. If you can maintain permanent Bone Storm, you can switch this to something else. But I didn't, because first I was doing like mostly like lower tier stuff, so the things just died too fast, and I couldn't keep up, Bone Storm 100%. So I used this aspect. But if you see yourself maintaining 100% or close to 100% Bone Storm, you can take it out and replace it with something else. And also we're using a shield. The stats on our shield will be damage reduction, max life, and intelligence. So basically, on every piece of gear, you should have a max life if possible. And here I'm using a bubble because I'm playing hardcore, and I think it's very, very useful. If you build very tanky, sometimes it just gives you one chance, after you take a big hit, or after you take like multiple big hits, it will proc and protect you and give you that couple seconds to TP out. I think it's very, very valuable, especially in hardcore. I mean, softcore, you just disregard what I said. And I think that's pretty much it about all the gears.